Happy Thursday at Soccer We Trusters, also known as the Trust Fund. Actually, it's Friday morning for me because I'm living in the future here in Australia. And we have a lot to talk about, like always. Plus, Charlie Davies is with us. So show your appreciation for Chuck by hitting like and subscribe. And let's get after it. Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Kate Abdu's favorite podcast, at Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Trash Can Cream Cheese Conrad alongside Hollywood Heath, also known as the Heartbreak Kid, also known as Heath Pearce in general. And we are absolutely buzzing, Heath, because
LeBron James,
the Chuck Wagon, Charlie Davis, Jay Davis, I can't even say your name because I'm so excited, is gracing us with his presence. Apparently, he's been taking photos of his morning footy partner in crime, Susanna Collins. We have evidence of it. Hopefully, producer Alex can roll that at some point. And that's why you couldn't be here, Chuck. But I don't know. Maybe you're racing NASCAR right now because the glasses you're wearing are pretty legit.
They are legit. They really help, especially when I have to do this podcast and the light. It's bright lights in here. All the.
I thought it was all the action in the chat. That's why you had to. Chuck
looks like the guy that everywhere he goes for the day, like when he goes to the gas station to get gas and fill up his tank, he goes inside and his only message to everybody is, "What's up, brother? Can I get what's up, brother? How you doing, brother?"
Chuck's just missing some handlebar mustache. If you can't see him, I don't know how you describe those glasses. They're from the future, but kind of NASCAR-esque.
Yeah,
but kind of like Daft Punk as well. Like you're kind of in the mix there.
No, honestly, I feel like these are WWF vibes.
I could see that. Yeah, a little Macho Man Randy Savage. I could see. Oh yeah, brother, snap into it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, step into a Slim Jim. Slim Jim.
Oh yeah,
that could be brother. Jimmy's new name, Slim Jim.
All right, we got a lot to talk about. We're gonna get into the U.S. Women's National Team. We're gonna talk about Leagues Cup. Defending in general is a lost art after I saw Messi slice and dice Atlanta United. Just talking about defending overall. We got AC Milan signing Samuel Chukwueze, which I love. He's a very good player. I'm a fan of him, but not if he's cut into the minutes of Christian Pulisic. So yeah, we've got a lot to discuss. But let's start with the women. They ended up drawing 1-1 with the Netherlands. We're down 1-0. That was the first time they had been down in a Women's World Cup game for like 12 years or something crazy. The first time they'd given up a goal in a group stage game since 2015. So unfamiliar territory potentially for this group of players, but they found a way to fight back and get into it and get a result. I actually pretty impressed with the players overall, less impressed with the coaching staff of the U.S. only making one sub. One sub? You got five listen, I'm hot. One sub. You got world-class players on your bench that would probably start for the majority of all the other national teams, and you make one sub. So I got big questions of Vlatko Andonovski. But let's just get with your overall thoughts first. From the future, Chuck, with those glasses, what are you saying?
Well, if Chuck was actually from the future, he would have said you should make more subs earlier on. But go ahead, Chuck.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. He's pretending to be in the future. I should have framed that better.
Well, one, you have to give credit to the Netherlands and the way that they approached the game.
They did. They were good.
They controlled the midfield. They absolutely controlled the midfield. They controlled the tempo, which then made the U.S. play very predictable balls, and it ultimately helped the Netherlands back line because they said, okay, here comes another long ball. Here comes another direct ball into the feet of Alex Morgan, or making Sophia Smith have to check so far back to get on the ball, get it to her feet. So from that first half, it was all Netherlands, not even close. And then you expected Vlatko to come out and say, all right, we're going to make a lot of tactical changes and shifts. Now they made the substitution in getting
Rose Lavelle on for sure.
But you have depth on the bench. You have Alyssa Thompson and Lynn Williams. You have other wingers. You could get for me, Ashley Sanchez is a baller. You needed someone who was a little bit creative to play under that attacking trio, because it seemed like to me there weren't enough players to break through the midfield and create those mismatches who could maybe beat a player or two on the dribble, and then that would free up that space for Sophia Smith, or for Alex Morgan, or for Trinity Rodman, just to run in behind, because we weren't seeing dynamic play in the attacking third, which makes it so much easier for the Netherlands to defend.
Okay, also, Heath, I probably should have led with this. I kind of got to the end because I'm a little disappointed with Vlatko's substitution pattern. But the Dutch coach, Andries Jonker, said before the game This guy said before the game, the intensity in European football really has grown the last couple of years, as well as the fitness. In the past, the American women were a lot fitter than the rest of the world, but I really think those days are over. If you look at the Champions League nowadays, you see the same level of intensity. So the big question is now, what is left of the U.S.'s superiority? Let's see about that. Yo, dude, we've won 4 out of 8 Women's World Cups. What's left of our superiority? Come on, this guy. But I will say, because we are talking a little WWE/WWF, I wish that more MLS coaches would do this, because this guy made it must watch. Like, I needed to watch now. I wanted to see the women stomp on their throats, and actually the Dutch were pretty good in the first half, but in the second half, I thought it was all us. You can take that however you want.
No,
I'm all over the place today.
I think with regard to those comments, I don't think he's wrong in terms of the delta. If you look at the way teams are matching up, it's a game of it's more margins than it is against the top teams than it was before. If you look at even the pathway to the last World Cup, I didn't think the U.S. women were going to win it, and they grind through each of those phases, whether it's Netherlands, England, France. Like, you just think
you didn't think they were going to win 2019?
2019, just
they
because
absolutely bossed it.
No, but if you looked at each one of those games, there were still it wasn't like they're shut out these teams. Like, there were opportunities for England. There were opportunities for the Netherlands. There were opportunities.
Spain was actually pretty good against
like
us too.
It's coming down to the margins where the U.S. women are still better. But before it was more than just margins, right? It was like clear deltas, and if the U.S. play their best, they're going to beat everybody. Now they're having to, like you do in any close game, withstand a few chances against, right? If you get a little lucky on a bad bounce, or somebody isn't clinical in the half chance or clinical in the chance, that can change the trajectory, like we saw against the Netherlands. I do think that gap is smaller, but they're still the best until they're not the best. And so I agree a little bit, but I also am like, you need to chill, man. You got to prove something first, you know?
Right.
I'm curious, Jimmy, what you think in terms of Julie Ertz starting as a center back, having been out for so long, and then coming back more of as a defensive midfielder to be placed as a center back over Alana Cook, and then seeing how it's not as easy for her to build out of the back, to get on the ball and to break the lines with her passing, because it just seems like the U.S. women's national team don't have an identity. There's not like a style of play. You watch the Netherlands, you go, oh, that's how they play. Overload the midfield. They were played in tight spaces. They weren't predictable at all. You don't see that from the U.S. So what do you see from your perspective?
Yeah, I think for me on the attacking side, there seems to be, I think we played more into it in the second half, and we obviously demonstrated it against the Vietnam team that was inferior. But those entry passes into Alex Morgan, where she drops into midfield and then she flicks it on into an on-running Sophia Smith or Trinity Rodman, that seems to be working for us quite well. The hard part is we did it pretty consistently against the Vietnamese, but against the Dutch, it was a little bit harder because they were prepared for it. What was interesting is the Dutch never dove in. They would get tight, but they would like just drop off and just wait. I noted it a few times. So that'll be interesting to see how Vlatko and the coaching staff figure out how we can still have success when you're playing against a team that's a little bit savvier defensively, which is what we ran into.
Jimmy, what I'll say is this. If the Netherlands are giving the U.S. problems like that, how do you think they line up against Spain?
Oh, Spain is so good.
You watch them, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Also, if I was the Netherlands coach, by the way, I would not be talking like this until Vivian Miedema came back. If she's back on the field, then I like your odds. But without her, you're still a team you are significantly lesser without your best player.
He also said that without Berenstein, who's one of their better attackers who had rolled her ankle before the game. Like, yeah, the size of these guys is I can't believe he said what he said. But again, I kind of appreciate it for a number of reasons too, and I like a little trash talk. I think it
didn't give you a reason to watch though. You do.
I was already watching anyway, but it elevated the whole experience for me. With regard to Julie Ertz, it makes me wonder how Alana Cook is playing. When I was at the game in San Jose against Wales, I didn't think Alana Cook looked great in that particular one. I think you have to have Julie Ertz on the field because she's a leader. I think she's ticks all the boxes for the intangibles. She seems to be more of a disruptor. She made actually a really big potential game-saving tackle to block a shot against the Netherlands. So you can see that she's got that grit. She's willing to put herself out there, sacrifice for the team. But I'm not the biggest Andy Sullivan fan. I think Julie Ertz might be better served for us to be in that 6th spot, and that's where we've had a lot of success with her in that. But I guess I don't know. Alana Cook might not be lighting it up. So
could you put a Ashley Sanchez as that D midi, because she's feisty too. I mean, she plays as a 10, as a withdrawn striker almost with Washington Spirit, but she's a tough tackler. I mean, she can mix it up, or you can drop Haran a little bit deeper and have her be that 6 who's a little bit more box to box.
Sure. For people that might not watch the women's national team as much, Haran is a little bit more box to box, of course, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But it's like putting Eunice Musa and Weston McKinney to cover for Tyler Adams. She's not like, that's not her best position. Can she do it? Of course she can. She's an excellent player and she knows how to play that, but that's not where her instincts are. So yeah, we could do it. And I think it would be interesting because you could bring on Rose Lavelle and Ashley Sanchez at the same time. Clearly Blacko's got some
trust issues
potentially, and some vibes, some vibes for Savannah DeMello, who I think is a good player, but it's crazy that she's getting her first starts with the national team in a World Cup where Ashley Sanchez is on your bench or Lynn Williams is on your bench or whatever it is. I mean, it's interesting, but I get it.
To be fair, Savannah DeMello absolutely has torn up NWSL. She's a baller, and
she is. I'm a fan. I don't think
I just don't think it's clicked yet, because she hasn't learned where she's supposed to be with this team, with this group of women, right? So you're still trying to figure out what my role is, because my role is completely different with Racing Louisville, where I have to do everything, that she's kind of relied on to win the ball, transition, get into the final third. Here I got to get the ball off my feet. I got to find Trinity Rodman or Sophia Smith or Alex Morgan and play off her. So I just think she's still trying to figure out what exactly her role is and how she can have the most impact without taking away from everyone else.
Now, Heath, I want to get your question or your thoughts on this. It's about the substitution thing, because if you're going to win any tournament of consequence, you're going to have to be 14, 15, 16 players deep minimum. And when you're not trusting your bench in a big moment, or we can see
too
in the group stage too. Yeah, I agree with you, Chuck, on that. That really blows my mind. And he said afterwards, oh, the team was in a good rhythm. We had them on the ropes or whatever. I'm paraphrasing here, but that was essentially the gist. Yeah, you have a team on the ropes, and you guys, we've all been on the bench before, and you always, when you're watching the game from that position, hey, if I got in, I think I could impact the game in this way. I could help my team in this way. I've identified a weakness and a vulnerability in the other team, and if I get in, I'm going to exploit that weakness. And we didn't give our best attacking players that are on the bench a chance to maybe impact the game in that way when the Dutch were reeling. Now, listen, I'm a big Sophia Smith and Trinity Rodman fan. You're not going to have to twist my arm to ever keep them on the field. But we have world-class players that are ready to go on the bench, and I thought we did our team a disservice.
Well, when you look at the final result, right, you take your risk in saying, I'm going to go with what we have. And there is some truth when some coaches say, hey, I was planning to make the sub, but then we got into a rhythm and you don't want to disrupt that, because if I make 1 or 2 or 3 changes, it can change the whole flow. However, and you've got quality on the field. However, you're building trust with these players. And when that doesn't pan out, right, you're under this criticism now of saying, why did you wait so long? You had an opportunity to bring in players, rotate, rest legs, do all the things that you brought all these players. You brought a deep roster to be able to go to them, and you have the talent to be able to go to them. So I'm not against the idea of like, hey, it was tough, but even in the closing moments, like, do something different, right? Do something different, because you've got people that can be game changers, put them on the field to be able to make those changes. And now that can create a little bit of divide, right? Of trust. If you're a player that's like, hey, when things were tight or things were hard, you didn't come to me in these moments. You went with these players. You went with the ones that you trusted more. You'd rather have these people who aren't working based on what they did previously today, as opposed to looking at objectively and saying, hey, today it's off, it's not working. We need to go with something else that could get us this win against this team that's showing some vulnerabilities. It doesn't need to be wholesale changes, but yeah, I think it's disappointing. Makes me nervous in terms of that trust that you build, or who you think can truly go and get you the result.
Heath, you said it really well. I mean, in terms of depth, this U.S. Women's National Team is supposed to have some real I mean, talk about energy boosters coming off the bench, difference makers. Alyssa Thompson has been crushing it with Gotham. You have Alyssa Thompson, this young up-and-coming rising star with Angel City.
Lynn Williams, Gotham. Yeah, Alyssa Thompson, Angel City.
Those two, that's what I said?
No, you got it backwards, but it's Jimmy.
Lynn Williams, Gotham, Alyssa Thompson, Angel City.
You said, you said Alyssa Thompson, Gotham. It's
fine.
All
right, whatever.
We're all on the same page.
Okay, either way, absolute ballers to come in, and this is where you figure out for the long term in those big moments in the knockout stages, who can come off the bench early, who can I depend on, because now those are going to be questions that are unanswered. Come at knockout stage, and you have a big one in the quarterfinals or semifinals. He was saying in the post-game quotes, it's going to take time to adjust. What? What are substitutes supposed to come in for? To change the game. That's why you make substitutions. You don't worry about time to adjust. So, man, if the U.S. women do not do well towards the end of this tournament, it's going to come back to these decisions right here in the group stage against the Netherlands, who are a really good team, but they are not Japan. They are not Spain. They are not England.
Germany looks good too.
Germany, some of these teams have some real weapons, top to bottom, and it's concerning in my mind.
Yeah, it's concerning as well. And I'm hearing from some of the former players that played for Vlatko, he's not a very good communicator. So now if you're Ashley Sanchez and Lynn Williams, who I expect to be top professionals, right? But they need a place to vent and process their disappointment for not being in these games. And you're going to run into like, why doesn't this guy trust me? And I wonder how that's going to show, to your point, Charlie, how that's going to show its face later on when they do need to be trusted. Again, I think the players themselves are going to be top pros, but I think that Vlatko could be handling this a little bit different in terms of his in-game management. We don't know what's happening off the field, and I'm still speculating, of course.
Can I just say though that
whispers I've heard about his management style. Go ahead. Heath.
But Jimmy, that's okay. If he's not a good communicator, that's okay. But you better have a staff that can communicate then.
Yes,
because you can be unbelievable tactically. You could be whatever, but you need to understand your weaknesses. The federation needs to understand weaknesses to make sure that they're staffed well, to make sure that anybody that's feeling a certain way right now is getting the time and resources put into them to make sure that this team is constantly swimming in the right direction. Again, it's no different from the men to the women in terms of what you tap into to represent the United States. And you do not want to allow some cracks. We saw that with our 2018 failures and the cracks that slipped into that. You don't want to be on the women's national team that fails at the World Cup. You also have Megan Rapinoe on the bench and Julie, and they can just go to Vlatko and say, boss, gaffer, this ain't working. We got to try. Right. We have to believe in these women that we have on the bench. They're ready. I've seen them. Or, hey, maybe we don't play with 3-4 in the back. Or maybe we don't play with a lone six. We don't need it because we're bossing the game. Let's add some more attacking weapons. They're sitting back. A lot of teams that the U.S. play are going to be in the mid block or sitting back. The Netherlands on this occasion, they controlled the midfield. Add more players to take care of that, because there's not too many teams that are threatening or are going to force the U.S. to drop deep. So in terms of making the game, add some more talent, attacking talent to the team, or players who can control the tempo. And Ashley Sanchez really stands out to me of someone who should be getting more time.
Well, the Netherlands have, I would say, slight control of the group. We have a better goal difference at the moment. We are both on 4 points. Us and the Netherlands. Portugal beat Vietnam 2-0, so they have 3 points. We play Portugal next. Portugal are good. I know it's their first time ever in the Women's World Cup, but they've got some ballers, and it's going to be a much more difficult game than I think people might expect on Tuesday. That game, we just need to draw to get into the knockout rounds, and the Netherlands play Vietnam, so it's going to be goal difference. There's a whole bunch of different tiebreakers. I wouldn't be surprised if we finish second, which might drop us into playing Sweden in the round
Gauntlet.
of 16.
It is a gauntlet if you
Yeah.
finish second in this group.
We want to finish first in Group B, but if we don't, we'll have Sweden. We most likely will face either Japan or Spain if we get past Sweden in the quarterfinals. Both of those teams have been playing very, very well. So it's not going to be an easy road, but I guess if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best.
And
so here we
England
are.
in the semifinals.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous, our road. No matter which way we go at this point, but it would be a little bit easier. I'm going to put my air quotes up, a little bit easier if we get first in our group. So we'll see how it all plays out. That next game is on Tuesday, and it should be a lot of fun. You can catch all the action on Fox and the Fox Sports app. All right, everyone, we're going to take our first break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we're going to talk a little Leagues Cup, a little bit of Messi, and the lost art of defending. So do not go anywhere.
Call Jimmy and Heath.
And the whole world is wondering, what's it going to take to stop this U.S. team?
Easy, love. We mark Alex. What about Rose?
Oh, bloody Rapino.
We could get younger players.
They already did that.
We have veteran experience.
Listen to what you're saying.
That is world class.
What's it going to take to stop this U.S. team?
They're faster. Slower. This precision with style.
Good luck with that.
Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies. It's always great to see him. He took off his glasses, so I don't even know what's happening right now. He's getting heated. He must be getting heated. And, of course, Hollywood Heath Pearce. And now, boys, let's talk a little Leagues Cup. I'm going to get into some of the results from Wednesday. We had DC United winning a game over Montreal. We had New England booking their ticket to the round of 32 for the Leagues Cup by beating San Luis 5-1. We have Monterrey beating Salt Lake. Monterrey looked very good in this game, 3-0. Philly taking care of Querétaro, 5-1. NYCFC deciding to just demolish TFC, Toronto FC, who I don't even know what's going on with that club. 5-0 NYCFC. Galaxy lost to Leon, 1-0, which is interesting. We're going to get into the Galaxy. If they get knocked out in the group, they don't play for 3 weeks. So we can kind of talk about the scheduling a little bit. And then Tigres beat Portland Timbers 2-1. But the big one, boys, Inter Miami beating Atlanta United 4-0. Leo Messi, 2 goals, 2 assists. Bossing it out there. Not a big surprise, but I know there's been some chatter online that Messi does this wherever he goes. And I 100% agree that we have plenty of evidence of him decimating teams in Spain, decimating teams in France when he played for PSG, doing the same for his national team. But it just felt a little bit too easy. And Heath, as our resident left back, and I'm obviously going to chime in. Charlie, I want your thoughts on this too. What was Atlanta United doing? Like the first goal, Sergio Busquets.
Not good. They're not.
Sergio, I get that. Well, that's I mean, at the end of the day,
one thing. People think this is Atlanta United 2018. They're not good.
They're not good. They're not good, and it's not a good look for anybody on that team, including another World Cup winner, Thiago Almada, who was a teammate of Messi, even though he didn't have too much impact on them winning it. He was still on the squad. You got Miles Robinson. He's on that back line, and obviously, he's got to take some responsibility for how they performed as well. But just basic schoolboy errors, Heath Pearce.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just horrible. Just like every step of the way.
Horrible.
Bad.
Terrible.
I mean, look, we've all done nothing but talk about Lionel Messi for a month now. Who do you think that you should be marking on the field, or at least knowing where is he? Lionel Messi is not fast. He's not going to beat you on a foot race. But if you, I don't
know. I think he would beat you in a foot race.
Anybody that's a top sprinter in
okay, fair.
But
fair.
With the ball, it's different.
Yeah, but
he's super quick.
You got no pressure on Busquets. You're going to allow Messi to just spin off.
That's the problem.
To hold the line.
Yeah,
pressure on Busquets. Why in the hell are you letting Busquets get on the ball? What the hell?
Even Sosa that chased down Messi and then thought that was the end of the play, didn't have to follow him into the box, and then just thinking that, I won't follow this runner. I'll just run through this play and be done. It's just a lot of those little details that you're just like. That's why. Listen, I go back to the fact that Messi scoring a match winner at the end of the game on a free kick that no goalkeeper really has a chance for, unless they left early, unless they whatever circumstantially, was the best thing that happened to us, because when you see some of the other things that would have just hurt credibility, like you saw defending in that game, I'm glad he got that first one in where you're just like, it's Messi being Messi. Let's not make this about anything else, because you go to that next game where Messi has 2 goals and an assist, and that obviously that second hockey assist. you go, oh yeah, some of this could have been prevented. This was not Messi. This is not Messi being Messi. This is some bad defending being bad defending.
This is shambles.
Yeah.
You say the little details, and I wonder, because I we get bits and pieces from the people we know behind the scenes, and I always ask a lot of questions about training methods and all that. And a lot of these teams that I'm hearing in MLS don't really work on team shape. They don't work on stuff that maybe they just take it for granted. Like, oh, well, they'll figure it out. They've had a lot of experience up until this point. I'm going to put them in a back four and they'll know exactly how to move. But when you start to play against players that have world-class ability and understand how to break down defenses and like, oh, I've seen this before, I'm just going to do X, Y, and Z. And Messi and Busquets obviously are so good, obviously. But they know how to break that down, and then they start to bring in other players. Like Robert Taylor obviously is benefiting from this presence, right? He can run with purpose. Like he knows when Messi picks up the ball, if he busts his ass like he did on that last goal against Atlanta and gets himself in a good spot, the ball's going to be there. And I actually likened it. I had a conversation here that when Guillermo Barros Schelotto went to the Columbus Crew, and I bring up Schelotto because that changed their team. They had somebody that could hold the ball under pressure, could make the right pass at the right time. And then all of a sudden, Robbie Rogers had his best season ever because he could run with purpose. You guys know that, like, if you're with somebody and you're on a team and like they get the ball to you 50% of the time, Chuck could probably speak to this better than me and you, Heath. But okay, it's not that you won't make that run, but like 75 minutes in, you're like, dude, that guy's not going to give me the ball. And now I'm going to track back if I make this run. And is it worth my time? I'm trying to be efficient with my energy. But when you have players like Messi and Busquets and Schelotto and all the other talented playmakers that have played in MLS, Valderrama and Echeverri, like you run with purpose because you know those guys are going to get you the ball. Secondarily, if you don't run your ass off into those spots, they get pissed at you because they're waiting for you to get into those spots and those gaps so they can make the pass. So that's the level that we're seeing, obviously, with Inter. Well, and I just am pissed at like the lack of defending acumen from what I saw from Atlanta, and I think it's going to be a big problem for a lot of MLS teams if they're not working on team shape and these little details, to Heath's point, to solve these types of problems.
I think what's very applicable to this situation is, Heath, in your experience with Thierry Henry and what it does for the group and how his demands in terms of playing style and training, if you aren't working your butt off to not only work for him and getting the ball, but for the team, and you want to be on the pitch playing with greatness, that it forces you to either sink or swim. You're going to give 100% commitment and effort to see the game and develop and play at this high level to win, or it's just not for you. You don't have it. You're not going to show up early. You're not going to put in the extra work, and that sees through, and then you're gone. You're not playing at all. And I think this group in particular with Inter Miami, you're not only getting Messi and Busquets, you're getting Tata Martino. The demands of every day have come up considerably. And so when you have that level, you are willing to make the extra run. You are willing to track back for a teammate that's out of position. You are going to just make runs because you know Busquets or Messi will find that pass where you may in the past, you're like, oh, these young kids who are playing in the midfield, Kramaski and Ruiz, and they're not going to play me the ball. They can't even see me. They're looking down at the ball. So I think that's a big benefit to having, a Messi, Busquets, and Tata Martino.
Interestingly, I was just literally before we were chatting, got on this on the show. I was chatting with Vanni Sartini, and he was talking about, obviously, Vancouver's going to play against the LA Galaxy, and the winner of that will go into the knockout rounds, as you had mentioned, Jimmy. And he had mentioned about Ricky Puig, and just that this guy as a player was he's like, this is one of the only guys. He's the only guy in the league, is how he started it, right? That can, when he's on the dribble, when he's on the fly, release the ball without setting up the touch to release the ball, right? He can play a ball in full stride, inside of the foot, outside of the foot, over the top, and perfectly weighted and move the ball around in stride. And that disrupts defenses. And he was giving a respect, not so much to there is bad defending sometimes, but he also has this capability to release the ball at full speed that you don't see it coming. You don't have a chance to set up for it. And then he immediately caught himself and he goes, well, as of like a week ago, there's two guys in the league that can to do that same exact type of thing, and talking about Messi. And there's three. Yeah. Right. But to some of the things that they do and we'll continue to see is at a world-class level. And like rarely to see in your lifetime of that quality. However, there is still, just like Jimmy's talking about, that like lost art of defending, not just individually, but collectively, to prevent things like that. You know, it's like
the comments coming at Jimmy. Jimmy will have to go back to his coffin shortly.
Yeah.
It's early here. It is
Yeah.
early in Sydney. And so, yes, do I know that I look like I just woke up? You're goddamn right. I look like I just woke
You
up.
actually
I
don't.
did.
You
I
don't. You
did.
don't look like that.
No,
Jimmy,
you look like you're about to go to sleep. Actually, if I had to say,
Yeah, it's a sunrise. I got the sunrise behind me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
honestly, though, Jimmy was, during that era of team shape, with the
Oh, come on.
square-toed boots, Chuck, where it was like, if it went to Jimmy, just booted it, and he'd say, boot it, and they'd all just run up
Boot
the
it.
field.
send it.
Yeah. I played in the back three where I just had to mark somebody. That was my whole job. That was no joke. Early MLS, I played in the back three, and they're like, "You're just marking Carlos Ruiz."
Well, that's crazy because that's what Leon did, and they won the CONCACAF Champions League, Jimmy. So, like, I
There
think,
you go.
if anything,
maybe
you're
that's
playing
a
in the
lost
wrong
art in some
league,
way.
or the wrong time.
Should have been down in Mexico. But I just it's frustrating because there's a lot of little things that those teams could be doing. I know Messi's an incredibly special player. He's an alien in a lot of different ways. And so he's going to make a lot of defenders, especially in MLS, look foolish. But it just seems like, and I put this out in a tweet, that there's not a lot of money in great defending. Like, you're not going to go out. I understand why there's no vested interest from MLS clubs like, oh, we're going to go buy a great defender, or we're going to invest on that side of the ball, because that's great defending doesn't put butts in the seats, right? And it's not going to sell tickets, and people want to see goals.
It's
so I can
also really
understand
nuanced, by the way. It's hard to see, right?
No,
Like,
yeah, it's true. That's
I'm
true.
sure, Jimmy, you played with really good defenders that you were like, oh, they're really good because they're out of position, and the only play they make is the big play. And if they just
A desperation tackle?
Yeah. I always talk about the Jamison Olave. I know he catches strays, but like he was always the one that got
Oh
the
my
goal
God,
line,
another
the goal
stray.
line and goal line clearances in games. And I'm like, yeah, but if you just challenge the ball 40 yards up the field, neither of us had to do this sprint to go back and make you the hero. Like, let's not be heroes and win the game.
And who's for both of you, who's been the best defender at reading the game to make it predictable?
For me, I'm a big Michael Parkhurst fan. If you're
Yeah,
talking
he
about a current player, I'll have to think about that. But Parky was
that you've played
fantastic.
with.
Yeah, Michael Parkhurst, Steve Cherundolo. I mean, these guys weren't physical specimens. They weren't gonna.
Well, Parky had to be that way as a center back, small, not the biggest.
Yeah.
But
I mean, those kinds of guys though
you're
are
right
like
with reading
Jimmy,
the game is incredible.
Jimmy, you may have been you had said it. That was like kind of like you, and I think I learned this in college, which is from Clive Charles, which is like if you're a defender and you're having to leave your feet, it's because you're out of position, right? And if you can learn to read the game earlier, you're very rarely in those vulnerable situations. And if you can, very few can do it at that elite level where they're a step ahead of the game. You talk about like the Nestas of the world, the Maldinis of the world that are just a step ahead of the thinking because they either see with their eyes or they see how the game's going and they've had enough reps to know like, if I'm a step ahead, I'm just going to pick this off, as opposed to having to, one of the frustrating things we all deal with is when you're a defender is having teammates that don't read the game really well, right? So everything is reactionary and the game is so fast now. And when you talk about playing against a Messi or another world-class player, you're done if you're trying to react to what they're going to do next, as opposed to anticipating.
Yeah, anytime I see some shit defending, I text Parky and I'm like, this is a joke, man. They need to hire us as defensive coordinators, which I'm actually kind of surprised that teams, maybe some are, if you guys have heard, I mean, we've heard of a throwing coach. Liverpool had that, and that's very specific, but I wonder if there are certain teams, and I'm thinking more MLS than maybe Premier League or any other league.
I think you'd be a great mid-block coordinator.
I would be awesome in mid-block coordinating, and then pushing us into the final third so we could try to win the ball closer to goal, Chuck. That's what I'm all about. All right.
Hey,
now,
Chuck, by the way, before he moves on, in Steve Cherundolo's words, no one plays in a mid-block anymore. Jimmy's out of a job, Jimmy's a mid-block. Jimmy's an unemployed mid-block specialist, you know what I mean? Waiting for it to come back around.
That's probably true because I don't have any mid-block jobs right now. But we saw the U.S. women's national team try a mid-block against the Dutch in the first half, and it didn't work. So there are still people trying to use it.
Sir Robo Kai finally made a live show. What up?
I love it.
I
love it. So there's another angle about this Inter Miami Atlanta United game we'll get into. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but some fickle fans were leaving the stadium after Messi was subbed out. And so I guess the big question is, how can Miami successfully leverage Messi long term? For me, when we see the clip of all these fans leaving when Messi gets subbed out, apparently it's just not easy to get to Fort Lauderdale in the middle of the week.
It's also 4-0. Like, my job is done at 4-0. Like, if you're looking for more entertainment after 4-0,
I'm not leaning into this
against the toothless Atlanta United.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to beat traffic too. I'm the biggest fan in the world, and I'm trying to beat traffic.
Right. Especially if you brought some kids to come see Messi play, and Messi delivered, right? 2 goals, assists. Yeah, right. You got to get back. So I don't really read into that too much, but I do think it begs the question, like, how does Messi and his arrival to Miami, how does it impact that club beyond his stay? Right now, it's only 2.5 years. We'll see what happens afterwards.
Well,
but how do they keep that momentum going, Chuck?
It's with the right signings, because Leo is a player, obviously, who shows you what world class is, the best of all time, and he brings you to the stadium. But a player like Robert Taylor, all of a sudden, he's becoming a fan favorite, right? So now you're developing some of the players that you already have. Your youth is coming up. Kramaski is another player who's going to continue to play and get minutes, and he's only going to develop playing next to Busquets and seeing how much vision and movement allows you to excel. Take away the dribbling ability, take away running past guys. Just the simple understanding of space. Of you can be slow. Busquets is not strong or particularly strong or fast or quick, but if you can't touch him, if you can't find him, then you're way ahead. And he's showing in MLS, and obviously it's just 2 games, but in this window, people doubted him coming here and having success because he's not the best athlete. He's showing you, I'll beat you with my mind, and with technique, good first touch, balls forward into space. If guys are making the runs, he will find you. So the development of the younger players that are coming through the academy, that's how you grab a hold of South Florida, because you're producing players that are from South Florida, and now you're producing players that are playing attractive style, going at teams, winning, and long term, the Leo Messi experiment will benefit Inter Miami because of the culture that is going to go along with winning with Tata Martino and developing top players.
Jimmy, how many people that didn't watch Miami play in the last 2 years that saw these highlights in the last couple of days immediately Googled Robert Taylor to see what national team he plays for, based on only to realize he plays for Finland, and he's got an English parent and is not American and eligible. I swear to you, I guarantee you people were searching that name, just being like, who's this guy? Who does he play for?
In fairness, he scored a couple bangers. Well taken. But yeah, I think there is something to your point, Charlie, and I agree with you that the culture that they set and then have to maintain is going to be really important. I think there's a lot of buzz around this team. I think that Tata Martino already demonstrated that he with
Atlanta.
Why am I blanking? With Atlanta United, but
Miguel Almiron, Joseph Martinez.
Yeah, Miguel Almiron. Thank you so much. So and Miguel Almiron just scored in for Newcastle in friendly, but
no one cares.
Yeah, that you can. Okay, that's great. But they, but that he can be a bridge for South American players, right? And that Inter Miami can be, and as Atlanta was, a nice launching pad into better opportunities potentially in the Premier League, or that could be the opportunity, getting to play with Messi. They have to really cash in on that side of it. But then, how do you continue that buzz? That's going to be the trick when Messi leaves.
I mean, it's hard.
I see some smoke behind you. I think your skin is starting to burn.
Jimmy, it is hard though, right? We've seen this, and I go to this because you look at the Beckham experiment, and the post of that was, or the latter end is, you had Keane, amazing success. Then you had your Gerrards, then you had your Ashley Coles, then you had this era, and then the constant upkeep of big name players coming in. And it's not that easy to get it right. I think they've set a new standard of the type of player that they want, but there's only one Lionel Messi, right? And when the Messi and Friends tour ends, you're going to still be stuck with some of those players' contracts probably that aren't the same without a Messi there. And you need to kind of build, like Chuck said, okay, you've now inspired a generation through your academy, the quality of that. You've now created a pipeline for players to maybe come through Miami from South America that are going to be your Miggies, your Almirons that could be sold on and be part of that type of project. By then, hopefully the stadium's a little bit closer to being done, and you can have all of these new things, but then you have to take it to the next level as a club as to what the next thing is, right? You can't hang your hat on in the same way that we're seeing with the Galaxy right now. Hang your hat on the trophies you won in the past and think that that's going to drive you for the future, because especially in a fickle market like Miami, you've got to offer somebody up something.
Well, look at the downward spiral of Atlanta.
Yeah.
They go from top class Tata Martino pushing to
whose fault is it? Chuck, say him. What's their name?
What's his name?
Y'all crazy.
Say it, Chuck. Chuck doesn't want to say it.
Hey,
say his name,
y'all
Chuck.
crazy.
If you were to put it on somebody, if you were to,
who are you gonna put it on, Chuck? Come on, Chuck. It may or may not be one of our former teammates.
Chuck,
Just say his name. Just say his name.
Hey, y'all crazy.
Guest room
Y'all
down in
crazy.
Atlanta.
Chuck's throwing these generalities out there. Doesn't want to get specific.
Hey, y'all crazy.
All right, we're going to take our second to last break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we'll talk about Leagues Cup overall. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We'll discuss it. Don't go anywhere.
When you're the FedEx Cup champion, your name's on this trophy forever. This is our season-long race. This is the sought-after trophy when we tee it up, the first event of the season that you think about.
3 tournaments with the world's best golfers battling for the tour's toughest trophy to win, the FedEx Cup. The playoffs begin August 12th on CBS.
Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy alongside Heath and Chuck. And we want to talk a little Leagues Cup, because the big question that our producers are asking us, and we want to explore it and have a discussion with all of you. Hit us up on Twitter at ISWT Pod. If you want to join this conversation, if you're listening to this later, not watching it live on the YouTubes. Does this competition have legs? Heath Pearce, I'll come to you first. Do you think fans really care about Leagues Cup?
Not right now. I think when we get to the knockout rounds, there'll be a lot more
juice, a little more juice.
Yeah, the quality of the games will be better. I think this is a feeling out phase earlier on, and quite frankly, there's only so much budget that clubs have to market to their fans, right? And I believe some of these games are part of the season ticket passes and things like that they have access to them during a very busy summer where there's a lot going on. I do think people will care, and they won't until they have a reason to care, right? Now they're seeing the results. They're seeing whatever. You need to get the players behind it. The pool of money, which I believe is $40 million. Of accessible dollars towards teams within this tournament. So it's a building process. It was never going to be overnight where you put this many teams into it. But I'll tell you one thing that I care about on this right away is just how many games MLS teams have won and how many games Liga MX teams have won. Like, that's where I'm at within all of this, is like not necessarily the individual games, because I'm getting a chance to call them. I called the LA Galaxy Leon game yesterday. But there is a pride for me of being a former player in Major League Soccer and us wanting to see our league be stronger and better. Just the overall sort of competition with Liga MX and how it plays out. But I do think as it goes on, you're going to see better and better teams, because you're seeing some discrepancies right now, like Querétaro against Philadelphia. You see Monterrey against Salt Lake. You're seeing some of these gaps that I think are going to play out in hopefully some unbelievable games in the knockout rounds. I also went through 19 rounds of penalties in that first one in Vancouver. So that was fun too. But I think fans will care. You just can't create history, like it has to happen naturally in itself. And so I think it takes time to play that out into making the stadiums full. But of course, I think people do care. It's going to take time to get that buy-in across the board.
Chuck, so we have all 29 MLS clubs that are participating, all 18 top division teams in Mexico participating. There was clearly a thirst to want to get every single club involved in a competition. And this was a risk. I think when the idea came out on paper, wow, that's great. We can have a meaningful competition. It was always going to be hard in year one to get people to understand what's happening and get the buy-in. And so there's going to be some growing pains. And that's why I'm not like reading into this too much. I do think, though, that it has a negative impact on the U.S. Open Cup, and that bums me out, because that's a competition that I think deserves more love and attention, doesn't get it. We've talked about that here, and we have the semifinals coming up. Maybe people will care more now because Inter Miami and Messi are playing in the
You're
semifinals.
damn skippy about that.
But I think the Leagues Cup is going to have a ways to go before I think it really penetrates into that. Oh, this competition matters. And maybe to Heath's point, it's when it gets into the knockout round.
Can I say though, Jimmy? Can I say on that though? This I think is force feeding change, and that's what we want. Messi is force feeding change. This league or this tournament format is going to force feed change of clubs being able to turn around and say, hey, it's too much on our schedule. It's too much congestion. Open up the rosters, open up the salary cap.
More depth.
Like,
yeah.
give me more depth. Give me more players to call upon. Give me more so I can now go to my fans and say, we're going to put out a really quality product at this time of the year. Like, I think there is a domino, hopefully, or snowball effect that this leads to. And I think there was some purpose behind that at the league level. I'm just speculating, but purpose behind that at the league level, but also for the future. I think hopefully that leads to this being a really, really big deal. Because remember at SoFi last year when they had like the round robin or like semifinals or whatever, and it was popping off in terms of the atmosphere, the quality of the games, the fans that showed up, but it was a very short window. They've got to find a way to make this impactful. And I've heard some coaches already say, hey, I wish this was like more Open Cup, like where you play a couple games now and you play a couple games later and a couple games later on in the year versus like this whole month window where if we lose, we got 3 weeks off. If we go to the next round, we've got 2.5 weeks off. And we got to find games and that sort of stuff. Sorry.
Well, some teams might actually appreciate having a little bit of that break, but that's a conversation for another time. Chuck, what do you think?
How would you feel if every year one USL team, the top team, gets to play in an MLS this season?
Playing MLS or playing Leagues Cup?
Playing MLS. Like 1 year.
Well, yeah, you're
yeah, but it's not like a promotion relegation. Like maybe it's Leagues Cup. Maybe it's like Leagues Cup. They get to play in Leagues Cup, not necessarily regular season MLS, but they get to play in Leagues Cup or something like that. So there's more weight to US Open Cup because you're like, oh, this team played in the Leagues Cup and I know what they're about. But I think for the Leagues Cup to really start to pick up steam, it's when you start to see Tigres and Monterrey, Club America playing in those big matches, semifinal. And mind you, I feel it's kind of odd that all the matches are in the US because it's a big disadvantage but it's a big disadvantage for the Mexican teams because you look at the head-to-head and you're like, man, MLS is far better than Liga MX. But if you flipped it and this competition was all in Mexico, the conversations would be a lot different. I can promise you that. So I wonder if there's a version of this where you play, because the benefit to playing these Mexican sides is sometimes playing in Mexico to get that experience.
Yeah, I agree. That's
right?
Cool.
So
I think there could be in the future. I'm not exactly sure why that. I mean, I'm assuming it's just controlling the variables in year one, or maybe the marketing dollars, or being able to sell against. I'm not exactly sure, but I hope that's the future for sure, Chuck, because I think that'd be an unbelievable experience.
Yeah.
Heath, since you brought one question.
Well, and by the way, Apple TV, up until recently, a Leagues Cup was not going to be on Apple TV in Mexico from a rights thing because of Liga MX and all the rights deals, and I believe it is now. So that may have been a part of it as well for obviously the global deal. That's like one of the few markets that I think it wasn't available on Apple TV at some point, but I believe is now.
Heath, you brought up something that I hadn't really thought of before, but if you're an MLS club, how do you tell your fan which competition matters the most? Is it the league? Is it Leagues Cup?
It's MLS
Is it the Open Cup?
MLS Cup is always the most important trophy.
Okay. So then when you add these other competitions, I could see
CONCACAF Champions League is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch.
Given it's coming, the World Cup is coming to the US, right?
If I'm a player, it's wherever it's going to make me the most money.
I love that reality, that real take on that for sure.
I mean, is it not a motivator? If something was significant, would it not be a big deal for you if you had a decent team and you know you can make a run at that, what that could mean for you personally? Obviously, MLS Cup's a big deal, but it's also like MLS Cup, you still have over half the teams making the playoffs, and it's still a crapshoot as to whether or not your team's going to make it. We're seeing some teams now consistently, whether you're the standard of the Seattle Sounders in their era, or now, with LAFC and Philadelphia being still the favorites to go there. It's still a very difficult journey to get there, though. Just beyond getting to the playoffs and then making that run.
I think it comes down to age.
Heath Pearce to Saudi Arabia.
That's
a funny comment.
The older you are, the more I'd say money is the motive. But for a young player, it's what's the biggest platform? Where do I, in terms of a shop window, probably the Club World Cup. That's so CCL becomes the end all be all to win that competition, because now all of a sudden you're playing a Champions League club, Champions League club, Asian Champions League club. It's the opportunity for the world to see you play. And this next one is going to be coming to the United States. I mean, there's nothing bigger. Although I think for the fans, it's easier to digest the MLS Cup because these are the teams you're competing with throughout the year. You see the most and the rivalries. And so it kind of,
you want fans to ride or die with you.
Yeah.
You want fans to ride or die with you for every competition. But I actually thought the whole, where do you put your marketing dollars was an interesting take, Heath, because you only have so much budget and you have all these things and some of the stuff is being force fed and how do you balance that? And that's just from a front office marketing perspective. Coaching staff has to look at it the same way. And now we're giving player perspective where are they going to put their energy, right? I mean, the guys only have so much they can expend. How efficient are they going to be with where they want to put it? And how do you balance it all out? And yes, ultimately it's getting to, you have to open up the salary cap. You have to allow these teams to spend if you want your teams to be competitive in all these competitions. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
It's data driven on marketing dollars. Of course, clubs can come up with more dollars to talk to their fans, but you can't ask your fans for more dollars. That's a hard thing, right? It's a hard ask to constantly go back to the well. And I talked that the amount of times that Mike LaHood used to ask us to donate money, Jimmy, when we were at Chivas, it was once, and then a month later would be in the next one. And it was turned into a monthly subscription of things that he was doing on, because he was trying to help so many people and do so many unbelievable things, which I love. But I was hey, man, you can hit me once. You can't hit me once a month. I've got to you're not the only one that I'm trying to no, he was obviously doing it for the right reasons, but that's the same with a fan. You can't the ask, it's a delicate relationship of them being a consumer and a fan and supporting, and then you trying to squeeze as much juice out of the lemon. So you've got to create a compelling argument. And again, it's first year and it's all come together very, very quickly. So hopefully we see how it plays out in the long run. Hopefully there's matches in Mexico, Chuck, because Jimmy and I would love to stay at one of your places down there.
Especially on the water, Chuck. I don't want to be in the mountains or anything. I want to be on the water. So let's do final thoughts. The one thing I did want to bring up, I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, is Samuel Chukwueze coming from Villarreal to AC Milan. That will impact Christian Pulisic in some ways. Well, I'm a big Chukwueze fan. Different maybe profile in terms of how they play and how they like to have success on the field. But if you could get Pulisic on one side and Chukwueze on the other, now they're cooking. But Leao is going to be there, of course. He's tremendously talented, one of the best young players in the world. So it'll be interesting to see where Christian fits. I have seen Pioli maybe, or at least being talked about, putting him in at the 10, which would be interesting to see Christian there with those guys around him. But that would be kind of my final thoughts. Nice moves from Milan. I think they've had a really good transfer window so far. But, obviously I'm concerned. I want Christian to play as much as possible. And I thought he got squeezed unfairly from Chelsea. But here we are, fresh start. Final thoughts.
The reason you go to Milan is to get the opportunity. So wherever he was going in Europe, you're going to compete. I think for him, Pioli just saying, I believe in you. We're going to make this investment. You're going to have opportunities both centrally as a 10 and of course wide right. The best players will play. So again, he just has to stay healthy. And I think this is a great environment for him to succeed in. This Milan team, you're going to have depth. You're going to be pushed for minutes, and that's what's going to push him further in his development. So I think it's a great move, and Chukwueze is just more competition for him to play over or play with. And in terms of final thought, I think it's the U.S. Women's National Team is what stands out to me in this conversation. Does Vlatko make the necessary changes in game? Because in-game management, it doesn't seem like it's quite there in this World Cup so far. So got to find a way to get the most out of Sophia Smith, because I think she's the real game changer in this team. Trinity Rodman, has to be a little bit better with her service because I think she was looking to be too aggressive sometimes. I think she has to mix it up of coming inside versus going down the line and just crossing it. But yeah, this is U.S. Women's National Team has obviously the talent to win, but they have to be set up the right way to get the most out of them.
Yeah, I think Roosevelt needs to start as well. I think the team is just a little bit more fluid, runs a little bit better when she's on the field, and she can deliver a great set piece as well. And evidence of that was Lindsey Horan dunking on the Netherlands on the corner kick.
We said that in 2019 about her as well. Yeah, my question is, as Jack stated, is Chuck Davies short for Chukwueze Davies?
I love that. Good question.
That's it for me. I realize that there's the Milan Juventus game here in LA tonight, so maybe I need to get over to that and see our men's national team play.
Yeah, get after it. We got Timo Weah, Christian Pulisic. Maybe they'll match up together on the field. They'll have to mark each other. That would be pretty fun. All right, that's it. We're done. Calling it a show, and Soccer We Trust is over. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Chukwueze Davies, Hollywood Heartbreak Kid,
see you next time,
Pearce, and me, Trash Can, Cream Cheese, Conradinho, Conrad.
James.
We appreciate your support and love as always, and we'll see you next week. Enjoy all the games. Go,
come on, haters. Keep it coming, haters.
Yeah.